Okay, let me start with saying I'm here today on March 7th, 2017, interviewing Betty Kelton, a longtime South Brunswick resident. I have a series of questions here, and we can expand on these, or you don't have to answer everything. We can just play it by ear, okay? These are suggestions. The heading that I first have is home life. Where and when were you born?
I was actually born at Middlesex Hospital in New Brunswick. I gave my mother a very difficult time, so the doctor had to do a cesarean for her in the hospital.
Okay.
I was brought up in Kingston. Now, my parents may have lived someplace earlier when I was first born. That, I was a baby, I don't know.
So Kingston, as far as you know.
As far as I know, Kingston.
Okay, all right.
I lived on the corner of Academy and Basin Street.
So how far off of Main Street is that?
The light where the current post office is Academy Street.
Okay.
On 27. And going down, about 2-3 blocks, there's one side street that comes in. It's a cross street that you cross. Then there's another street that just comes in from the left, and that goes down the hill to connect with Ridge Road.
Okay.
But I don't remember the names of the streets.
So not too far from the center.
They're not too far.
Okay. All right.
2 long blocks, 3 long blocks.
Okay. Can you describe your family growing up?
My dad was a mechanic. He worked for the garage there, Stewart's Garage, and I think it's still owned by the Stewart family.
Wow.
It's now Princeton Garage, I think they call it now.
Okay.
But at that time, it was Ben Stewart's Garage. And he worked there along with his name was George Lewis. He worked with another George Luck. And you know the Luck family.
Yeah, I've heard that name, yes.
They have been in Kingston forever.
Yeah. Yep, I know that name.
So he worked as a mechanic. Mom was a housewife.
Okay. Okay. So where were your parents born, and or why did they choose to move to South Brunswick if they weren't from South Brunswick?
My dad was brought up in South Brunswick.
Okay, so he was from here.
And my mom, well, fell in love, got married, and that's where they wound up.
So they were.
My
born
mom
there.
was from Middlebush in Somerset County.
Okay,
Franklin Township.
So not pretty close,
Mhm.
pretty local.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. Do you have any contact with your relatives? Are you in contact with them? Cousins?
I've got a million relatives.
Yeah.
Some of them very close, some of them not so much.
Are some of them local?
There's a lot that live in Princeton. There's some more distant cousins, I think, that still live in the Kingston area. My grandparents, my dad's parents, lived on 27, and right where, where the Trap Rock Road comes out?
Yeah, yep.
They lived there.
Okay.
In the house right next to where the Trap Rock Road comes out.
Okay. Sure. So that's going towards the west,
Yeah.
westerly direction. Well, I have on here what languages did you speak in your house? I mean, I'm assuming
English.
it's English. Yeah, well. Do you know any stories from the old days? From when you were growing up. What were some of the stories that were told, and the family stories, interesting family stories, or?
Not that I can remember any family stories.
No.
My grandparents didn't talk that much about anything.
Uh-huh.
And in fact, as I was growing up trying to get information from them about their parents and grandparents, it was like, what do you want to know that for?
Yeah.
I've been able to dig out a lot of family tree. Well, one of my cousins has done a lot of the dirty work, done most of the work, but between him working very hard and me looking over his shoulder and saying, nah, that's not what I remember. We've been able to track the family tree back to 1805.
Wow.
That's
Wow.
pretty
Yeah, that is impressive. Wow.
It goes all the way back to a man, as they called him, Harry the Slave. He must have been born in about 1805 because someone came across his manumission papers, and at that particular time, I think a male had to be at least 25 before they were freed.
So that's what the manumission papers are. Is,
Right,
Yeah.
his freedom.
Okay.
And that they've tracked at 1830, so that's how we come up with his birth date. He married, had a bunch of kids. One of them married again, had a bunch of kids. So you go down, see, he was Harry the Slave. His name became Henry Salter, rather. He had a son called Henry Salter. That Henry had a bunch of kids, and one of them was Mary Eveline Salter, and that was my grandmother.
Okay. Salters.
So, and my grandmother was one of about 14 kids, if I remember correctly.
Wow. Big family.
So they crisscross married into a whole bunch of other families. So I always laugh and say anyone who's been in this area more than 2 or 3 generations is probably a cousin of mine. So when you ask about do I keep in touch with my cousins, there's too many of them.
Describe the household that you grew up in. What was it like there?
The house when we lived in it was a 2-family house.
Okay. So it's like a duplex.
And now it's a 1-family house.
Okay.
But at that time it was a 2-family house. We lived in the front half, and there was an older, I think they were German or Jewish, I'm not sure which, who lived in the back half of the house. And this was before the days of indoor plumbing, so we had an outhouse.
That was my next question. I know you have electricity. I don't have to ask that question.
Yeah.
But the other question was indoor plumbing.
No.
So you had an outhouse.
We had running water,
Okay.
but no indoor plumbing.
So when it was wintertime, you had to go out in the cold.
Right.
Did the children have their own rooms? Did you all have
I
your
had
own?
I was an only child,
Okay.
so I had my own room.
Okay. So that was probably relatively uncommon in that day to have your own room.
Probably, I can't say for anybody else,
Mm-hmm.
but I had my own room. My cousins that I knew, if they shared a room, it was either with one brother or one sister. There was always enough room.
Okay.
I mean, we were never all squeezed into a 1-bedroom house. There was always enough room.
Because you hear the stories a lot where everyone was in one room.
No.
So you didn't have that.
No.
Well, how was your house heated? I mean, back.
You know, I knew you were going to ask that question.
Coal or oil or.
And I honestly don't remember.
Oh, that's okay.
There was a furnace in the middle of the floor, and I assumed that it was an oil furnace,
Mm-hmm.
but I really don't remember. I really don't remember. I mean, there was no coal coming up, but I think it was an oil furnace. You know,
Yeah, well, coal. It's very messy in the basement because they
Yeah.
have to have some. So you would probably know if it was coal.
No.
Because oil is just a tank, right?
Oil, and I think it was one of those where there was a tank on the back of the furnace.
Uh huh.
It is.
So you can have a tank in the basement. Yeah.
No, I think we had I think the tank was like on the back of the furnace.
Okay.
I honestly don't remember.
Okay. Okay.
Remember, I was only a kid.
Now, the next question. I know what kind of lighting you had in your house. You had electric lights.
Oh,
in your
yeah,
house.
we had
Yeah.
electric. And we had a telephone.
Okay. So,
Party line back then.
You know, I remember a party line. I had a party line growing up, and my mom used to yell at me to get off the line. So I had experience with party lines.
Yeah.
So did your family have a garden to supplement, or?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
And what
Oh,
kind
yeah.
of things? Just
Vegetables.
vegetables. No animals. No
No, 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 no,
chickens.
no, 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 no. Mom had a vegetable garden because Mom, she had green thumbs. She could grow anything. And of course, back then there was no such thing as a freezer to freeze food, but you canned anything that stood still. So there was always canned vegetables and
What about an ice box?
literally.
Yeah.
I mean, the Iceman came and brought in ice.
With the tongs and delivered.
Right.
Yeah, I've heard about that.
Yeah.
What was your favorite meal as a child, if you remember, or did you have one?
Don't remember really.
No.
Probably ice cream, probably strawberries because I love strawberries.
That sounds good. Did your family go on vacations, and where did they go, if so?
Vacation would have been going to visit relatives.
Mm-hmm.
Because I remember we had relatives in New York State, we had relatives in Virginia, and we would go up to Poughkeepsie, New York, and Stanfordville, New York. Found out later that the family that we visited up in Stanfordville was my mother's brother. And I found out recently that house was a stop on the Underground Railroad.
And this is in New York?
In New York,
Oh,
in Stanfordville.
Okay.
In Stanfordville. That's outside of Poughkeepsie.
Wow. That's interesting. Well, what role did religion play in your childhood and in life?
Strongly Methodist.
Methodist. And could you tell us a little about your friends from the neighborhood? Do you remember who you hung around with back then?
My best friend back then was a gal named Betty Underwood. She lived halfway between where I lived and and Route 27.
Okay.
And the only thing that was funny was that she had a Great Dane dog, not a Great Dane, a German Shepherd. And the German Shepherd was told to take care of Betty. Well, he took care of both of us. The dog figured Betty was Betty, and if anybody came anywhere near either one of them, it was a grr.
So you had protection.
We had protection.
That's great.
There was Betty Underwood. There was Irving Potts, a Billy Bubeck, Rita and Evelyn Taglioni. Maybe I'm pronouncing it wrong, or remembering it wrong. Tag is something another. And those are the ones that I remember playing with most of the time.
Okay. Pretty good list there. Well, I know the roads were paved, but sometimes, back in the day, they weren't paved the same way. But I was just wondering, what did Route 1 look like as far as how many lanes it had, or George's Road, places like that? Did they look much different?
Route 1, I didn't travel that much. We traveled 27 all the time. So Route 1, I don't remember that much, other than there was a playmate that I had that lived on Route 1. Actually, she lived on Route 1, but she came to the Kingston School. And the only way I got to see her was to cut through the middle of the nursery, Princeton Nursery. I could walk through the nursery to get to her house.
Okay.
To play with her. And Route 1, I don't remember that much about it, although one of my dad's jobs was also driving a school bus.
Okay.
So sometimes he'd pick me up in the morning and I'd ride along with him.
You get a little tour.
And I would get the tour over to Monmouth Junction or Dayton, as he would pick up kids and drop them off from one place to the other.
That sounds like fun.
It was for me.
Yeah, no, it does. But you were saying, so your father drove a school bus, but how did you get to your school?
He dropped me off.
Oh, so it was part of the route.
Because
Okay.
the school bus was run by Ben Stewart. Ben Stewart had the garage which is right across the street from the school.
Okay. That's
So
great.
when he'd bring the school bus back, he'd park the school bus and I'd run back across the street and go to school.
That's pretty good. It's pretty nice. So you mentioned before that you were a Methodist, so you went to a Methodist church. And
Right.
How did you normally get there? Was it within walking distance, or did you?
Usually, my parents always had a car.
Okay.
And
Do you remember anything about the car?
had a running board.
It had a running board. Okay, could have been from the 40s then, right?
Oh yeah, my dad always had a car.
Okay.
He was a mechanic.
So they always work too.
Oh yeah, and they always worked.
That's great. Do you have any special friends or teachers that you have fond memories of from your school days?
From Kingston,
Mm-hmm.
kindergarten teacher, Miss Marchese.
Okay. So, where did your parents do their shopping for groceries and clothes? I mean, you're right by Princeton, so did they go into Princeton or somewhere else?
I don't remember shopping in Princeton. I'll again have to say I'm not too sure. I remember my mom driving down to pick up my grandmom, driving down to Franklin, pick up my grandmom in Middlebush, to take her into New Brunswick to shop. And that's really the only shopping I remember doing. I remember walking up because at that time there was a store up on 27 which had, it was like that year's version of what a Quick Check would be today.
Okay.
You know,
Almost like a general store.
like a general store.
Yeah.
And she would pick up some stuff there, but I really don't remember, because back then you raised most of what you wanted, your vegetables. You bought fresh stuff from farm stores. You canned. My grandparents raised chickens, so we always had chicken. And I honestly don't remember actually shopping any place other than New Brunswick.
New Brunswick. Yeah, but we didn't do as much shopping as they do today,
No,
as we
no,
do today.
No.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And my mom made most of my clothes too.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
She.
So she had the sewing machine and the
Oh, yeah.
patterns and everything.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
In fact, I still have her sewing machine.
Yeah.
When she had it, was one of those old-fashioned. You'd pedal it with
The
your
foot
feet.
pedals. Yeah.
Foot pedals.
The old singers.
Old Singer.
Yeah.
And my dad converted it and put a motor onto it for her.
I have the
And-
same thing in my basement from my grandmother.
Yeah. And I still have that converted machine. It quit on me one time, and I lugged it to a Singer repair place to get it fixed. And I had to laugh because it's heavy as lead, you know. And when I finally got it into the place, the guy looks at me and he says, "What kind of sewing do you do?" And I said, "Straight up and down, nothing fancy, no buttonholes, nothing, you know, nothing elaborate." And he says, "Well," he said, "I can fix this for you, and it'll cost you this much. Or you can buy one of the fancy dancy ones, and that'll cost you that much. But if you're only going to do straight up and down sewing, fix this one, because this will sew trees together, and the other ones will always break."
So you got it fixed.
I got it fixed. Still use it.
Really?
Mhm.
Wow.
Still works.
Wow, that's something. That's something. It's a good story. So you went to New Brunswick. Did you ever? Trenton's farther than New Brunswick. So did you end up going to Trenton?
We wound up moving. We left Kingston area during World War II because my father got a job working for the Army as a civilian employee,
Okay.
and it was easier to commute back and forth. So we moved closer to Hamilton Township, so he
Okay.
wouldn't have to commute so far.
Okay, so he worked in. Oh, okay, so it's southeast. Okay.
Okay.
All right. Yeah, Hamilton is closer. And so New York or Philadelphia. I mean, did those? Do you go to those places very often?
New York, never. Philadelphia, because there was a relative that lived there, and Mom would go to take care of her.
Okay, so Philly once in a while. So we know you had a car, but we don't know what year it was, but it had running boards, because that's one of my questions on here. What kind of socializing did your parents do? Where did they go out when they wanted to have a good time, or what did
They
they
had
do?
loads of friends, so
Mhm.
it was from one person's house to another.
So you went to people's houses?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so house parties or stopping by. Um, and what kind of organization did your parents or family belong to? I mean, you went to a Methodist church. Were there any other organizations or social groups or anything like that that you can remember?
Not that I remember.
No.
My dad was a Mason, but he wasn't. He didn't go all to every Mason affair that was. I say he was a Mason, but he wasn't like my grandfather, who was a big. Don't ask me what the names are, but someplace in one of the crazy newspapers is a picture of him.
I have it.
You got it?
I have.
Of my grandfather? You
Yeah.
got the picture?
Yeah, right here. What's
Oh, the sheriff, what's her name, wrote a long time ago.
Yeah, she wrote some really nice articles here. Let's you can hold it up. You can get it in the picture there. And
Oh,
there,
yeah.
And there he is.
That's my granddad.
Yeah.
And he was a head honcho of some kind in the, that's his Masonic outfit. But don't ask me what it is.
So that's Pop Lewis.
That's Pop Lewis.
Yeah, I read that.
That's my granddad.
That's great. It's great to have it. We were reading. I read the article, and it is a great article.
She did a very good article.
Yeah, they're fantastic. It really was nice. Do you remember your first job outside the home as a teenager, working outside of the house? Do you remember what it was, or?
Oh, we were no longer in Kingston at that time.
Oh, okay.
Because we moved away when I was in 7th grade.
Okay.
And my first job was probably acting as a tutor to kids.
Oh, so you tutored?
And then helping, tutoring other high school kids,
Mm-hmm.
helping them with their homework and what have you. And
So you were a good student to be a tutor.
Yeah, I was a good student. I wound up being valedictorian of my high school class.
Wow. That's something.
But then that's a long story too. They didn't. Now, how can I say this? This was a very prejudiced time.
Uh-huh.
I graduated in 1949. At that time, girls were supposed to be stupid. Black girls were doubly supposed to be stupid. So they couldn't accept the fact that I was black, I was female, and I was first. And they also couldn't accept that the two people next to me were also girls. So they never named a valedictorian for that class. They gave the top 10 students the role of giving the valedictorian speech.
But you were included in that?
I was included.
Oh, okay.
Listen, if I hadn't been, Mom would have raised hell.
Wow.
And that's another long story.
Wow, no, that's very interesting. And so that's 1949, you say. So yeah, that's
That's another, because my mother and I had a reputation at the high school. Back at that time, traditionally, the high school senior class always went to Washington, D.C. And at that time, Washington, D.C. was a very
right.
segregated place. Well, they told me I couldn't go. Because what are we going to do with her? You know, we can't put her up in the hotel with everybody else. So my mother said, either she goes or nobody goes. So then they accused Mom of being a communist, which she wasn't. And you're being led astray by that horrible organization, the NAACP, which she wasn't. She just said, if the class is going to Washington, D.C., Betty is going to Washington, D.C. So then I looked very helpless and put on my helpless look and said, I've never been to Washington, D.C. I had been, but they didn't have to know that.
Right, right.
And so the school had to find, accommodation for me. And Mom said, and not in some flea-bitten something another. So they arranged to put me up at Howard University. But Mom says, you're not sending her there by herself. She needs a chaperone. Well, don't you want to go with her, Mrs.? No, that's not my job. That's your job.
I had to ask your mother's name, though.
Willie Ann Lewis.
What was it?
Willie Ann.
Willie Ann, okay.
Okay. Then the school board was having a fit because at that time they did not have a black teacher in Hamilton Township. Because it wasn't Trenton High, it was Hamilton Township
Right.
High. They had to borrow a teacher from Trenton to act as my chaperone to go to Washington, D.C. They were very happy to see me get out of that school.
That's a great story, though. Did you have a good time?
Uh-huh.
Well, that's good.
I did have a good time.
No, that at least is a nice ending to that story, though.
Yeah.
A lot to go through, and wow, your mother sounds great. She sounded like she was quite a person.
She was.
Yeah.
She was. That she was.
No, that's great. Did sports play any part of your
I was not
Nice.
a good sports person. The neighborhood kids would have a neighborhood softball game. I couldn't hit, couldn't run, couldn't catch, so they made me scorekeeper.
What about any other extracurricular activities?
I tried playing basketball.
But any others outside of sports?
I was on the debating club.
Okay.
I was on the newspaper. A couple of times on the radio because there was a Saturday morning program where they had kids from the different high schools come on. So I'd be on that Saturday morning program. And that was about it when it came. I tried playing hockey, but I could run, but they didn't have a girls' track team back then.
So you played field hockey?
Field hockey.
Okay.
I could run, so I played at that time they called it the wing, on the far outside.
Yeah.
Until one gal started swinging the hockey stick and hit me in the shins, and I said, wait a minute, you're supposed to be hitting the puck, not me. And I said, that's the end of playing hockey.
That was in your field hockey career.
That
huh?
was the end of my field hockey career. They had a group which I forgot now what they called it, but we would go on hikes.
Like an outing club.
It was the equivalent of that time to what the outdoor club was here
Okay.
in South Brunswick many, many, many years later. And we would go on hikes walking, I remember one time we went on this long hike from the high school to, and where we lived, all the way out to Crosswicks, the other side of 130.
Mm-hmm. Crosswicks Creek
Yeah.
and all that. Can you have memories of your girlfriend's friends and things like that? I mean, from that era, you had talked about some earlier friends. Do you have any memories of that?
Well, when we moved to Hamilton Township, then there was a new group of friends.
Okay.
But and I sort of lost contact with the people that I knew in Kingston.
So you were out in Hamilton. So after you graduated, so you went to which college?
Douglas College.
So you went to Douglas. So
Correction, it was called NJC at that time.
Okay.
New
Okay.
Jersey College for Women.
So, okay. So you went up to Rutgers,
Hmm.
and was there any memories of that? Anything that stands out from those days?
I I liked NJC as it was back then. It has changed over the many years because, well, when I applied to college, I was accepted in several different colleges, but finances said go where the money is, and I had a paid scholarship going to NJC,
Oh, okay.
uh, which took care of tuition. The only thing my parents had to take care of was room and board
Okay.
because I wanted to go to another college, and they looked at me and said, "Money." And so the deal was, do at least 1 year there, and if you really can't stand it, then we'll figure out what to do. But after the first year, I liked it because it was a chance. At that time, I think it taught the girls, well, we were young women then, the fact independence and and to be self-sufficient. And of course, a lot of the gals back then, I think they were more looking for husbands than what they
Right,
were looking
right.
for degrees. But my point was, you have to be able to take care of yourself.
And what was your degree?
Chemistry,
Chemistry.
yeah.
Oh, a hard science.
Mm.
What was your first job as an adult? I mean, or after college, or did you end up doing or working anything with chemistry, or?
I got married when I was still in college.
Okay.
So my first job was taking care of baby number one. And then I realized that we needed more money. So I went back to the college and talked to the head of the department. And he was more of a friend and mentor, and so he was my teacher as I knew him, but he'd been promoted to become head of the chemistry department. And he said, "Can you type?" I said, "No." And he says, "I need an assistant who knows me and a backup person who can back me up. But you've got to be able to type."
Okay.
And he said, "But I don't need you until September. You got all summer to learn how to type." So I went to secretarial school and learned how to type. So my first job was acting as an assistant to the head of the chemistry department at Douglas.
Okay. So you worked at Douglas for the first job.
And then after that, and I stayed there for quite a while, then along came baby number two. So I quit and started working part-time as an instructor there at Douglas.
Oh. Well, that's a change.
Well, because I could only work part-time. So I could be a part-time instructor, but I couldn't be a part-time assistant.
Yeah, but that was a nice move, though, right?
Yeah, it was
Yeah.
a nice move. And then after the next couple of kids showed up, I wound up working down at Carter Wallace, Cranberry,
Okay. Yeah.
and as a biochemist,
Oh. Okay. So you
and stayed there until I retired.
wow. So that's actually that's a great story because you got your degree
Mm.
and then you couldn't use it at first, but then eventually you ended up using it as an instructor,
Mm-hmm.
and then you worked at Carter Wallace. It's a nice
Yeah.
story. It's a very nice story. What a good story. Where did you live when you first got married?
In New Brunswick.
In New Brunswick. Okay.
Yeah.
Whereabouts?
On Lee Avenue.
Okay.
We rented an apartment.
Okay. So, and then you were New Brunswick, and then
And
what was
we stayed in New Brunswick. We rented an apartment, a couple of apartments. Wound up buying a house in New Brunswick. outgrew the house and then moved into South Brunswick to
Oh.
where we are now, where I live now.
Did you raise your children in New Brunswick or South Brunswick?
Both.
Okay, both. All right.
The oldest one graduated from New Brunswick High School,
Okay.
but the younger ones all graduated from South Brunswick one.
And how many children?
Four.
4 children. Okay. Wow. What are their names?
Todd is the oldest, and Wayne, Karen, and Jerome.
Okay. So describe raising children here in South Brunswick.
Fun. When we first moved into South Brunswick, it was a new development because I live in the Brunswick Acres development,
Okay.
and it was brand new.
This is the 50s.
We moved there in the 70s.
The 70s. Okay.
The 70s, 71.
Okay.
And everybody knew everybody, and I remember having block parties, because there were only a few houses right there on Oakey Drive, the street that goes into the development.
Mm-hmm.
And everybody would see everybody kept an eye on everybody else's kids, so they say it takes a village to raise a child. Well, that was our village, and and they were our kids. And it was interesting. And then as the kids grew up, they started at Greenbrook School, and then went from Greenbrook to, they never went to Brunswick Acres School, because I'm trying to remember the times now, and Karen and Jerome were already in the middle school, Crossroads. And the question for Jerome would be, would he go into Brunswick Acres School or go into, I had an option for him. But at that time, Brunswick Acres School was open, as what they called the open planning, And I knew my youngest son, Jerome, and I said he did not need open planning. He needed a more structured,
You need structure.
arrangement. So he never went to Brunswick Acres School. They went to Crossroads and then to the high school.
Okay. Okay.
And then it was playing chauffeur, taking kids all over from one meeting to another meeting, to Boy Scouts and to
Normal suburban life.
enormous, yeah.
Driving around.
I learned all the back roads of South Brunswick.
Now, are you a grandparent?
I'm a grandparent and I'm a great grandparent.
Oh, okay. So how many grandchildren? And what's
Now you can
the
make me
number?
stop and count. There's a couple of extended families there because my 2 married children, both married people who already had kids, so there were. So I have a couple. I don't like to use their term step grandchildren because I count them as mine.
Mm-hmm.
So Todd has 3 girls and a boy, and Karen has 2 boys and a girl. So that adds up to 7. And then when you get into great-grandchildren, Karen's stepdaughter, the daughter, has 1, 2, 3, she just had another one, 4 children. And I go over to Todd. His oldest daughter has 1, 2, and a step great-grandchild. And his youngest one has 2. And they're scattered all over the place. My daughter is in Florida with her extended family. The oldest son, which is Todd, is out in California with his extended family. One of his daughters now lives in Georgia with her 2 little ones. One's in Manhattan and one is
Oh, okay.
up in Dobbs Ferry.
Okay, Dodge trip. So you get to visit. You get to travel to visit, right? If you want.
If I want.
If you want. What what would you say your proudest accomplishments are? I mean, family or the
I would say family. The fact that my husband and I have 4 healthy kids, got them all through college with no bills.
yeah, that is a feat.
Yeah. And they didn't owe anything, you know. So I mean, we were able to, between the 2 of us working, we were able to get all 4 of them through college.
Yeah, that's a real accomplishment, especially these days, right?
Yeah.
What are the biggest changes you think you've seen in the township over the years? I mean, it's grown a lot, of
It's
course.
growth.
Yeah.
It's growth. What I liked about it was its diversity, you know, the mixture of people. And I still like that about the township, is the diversity.
Yes, it is. What world events had the most impact on you over the years? That would, you know, by your reckoning?
I honestly can't say. I remember World War II. I remember that you had the rationing for food, rationing for clothes, rationing for gasoline. The fact that you had to pull down blackout shades because you were afraid of, you know, airplanes and what have you.
In the lights on the cars
The
sometimes
lights.
were half blocked, right? The headlights.
That
I heard about that.
I don't know. They might have been. I don't know.
So you had the shades. You actually
We
had
had the
it
black shades that you had to pull down.
just so you couldn't see
So
from
there'd
the
be no-
plane or something.
No.
Wow. Would you have any advice if you were to dispense advice to young people of today? Would you have something like that, or or is that too cliche?
That is a cliche.
It is a cliche. You're right.
That is a cliche. My only thing is do the best you can in anything you attempt to do.
It's good advice.
Don't try for perfection because there's no such thing. But do the best you can. I mean, the old saying is aim for the top of the mountain and maybe you'll get to a molehill.
Okay, thanks. Now, how would you like to be remembered? In the community, by your grandchildren, by your children? It's a tough question.
As somebody who did the best they could, they could with the information that they had. I'm not saying I did everything right, but I did the best I could with the facts that I had on hand.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's great. I like the whole story. I just wanted to say thank you. Thank you for coming in and sharing. And it's a great story. Thanks for sharing your story with us.
You're quite welcome. You're quite welcome.
Thanks, Betty.